Hello and welcome to step 3 of how I healed my depression naturally. Here we go.
My happiness is right where I left it. I can remember when the simplest was all I wanted.
Hello everyone and welcome to Freedom Friday, where you learn how to free yourself and live your dreams. I'm Darienne from DariaAwakened.com and I'm here to talk about the third step that I took to healing my own depression naturally. Again, disclaimer, I said this last video, if you're on any medication, don't stop without talking to your doctor first. And you can do all this stuff on top of what you're doing if you're taking any kind of medication. And you don't have to do it exactly the way I did it, but this is just the way I did it. So, step 3 was probably the most, I might even cry, probably the most profound awakening of all my life. I've had many awakenings. I think that when you are on a spiritual path, consciously on a spiritual path, we have these little awakenings. I think each moment is a chance to have an awakening, and we do very many. We read books. We could be inspired by nature. We could have a conversation, and something can click in our brains and go, "What?" And we wake up a little bit for that moment. And sometimes it lasts a really long time, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it lasts a lifetime, and it brings you to a whole nother level of consciousness. And that was this awakening for me. So after taking step 1 and step 2, you know, I was reading my books and I was having mini awakenings, and I was taking the steps and the inspired steps to awareness and the detachment that I talked about in the last video. And I was still very, very depressed, though, if I'm going to admit it. When I was reading The Power of Now, I actually became almost more depressed, because it was like, well shit, if there was like no reason to live. I was like, well, what the fuck? there's like, what's the point of all this, you know? And so I had this moment where I was in the bathroom of the home that I'd grown up in, because I had to move back in with my parents, my father, because I ran out of money and I was broke and I was an alcoholic and I was just fucked up. I was at rock, mother effing bottom. And I had a 4-year-old daughter at the time, 4 or 5-year-old. She was 5, I believe. And I found myself curled up on the bathroom floor, begging for God to take me, begging. And I was in so much pain. And this, unfortunately, was a very familiar place for me, especially having lived in my father's house. I was sleeping on the couch with my 5-year-old daughter, and you know, I had nothing to give her. I didn't even have love to give her at that time, and it was really a really sad point in my life. I had been homeless prior to. I was living, you know, couch surfing and living out of my van. It was really a sad existence, and I had just begun this quest, but you know, you still are up against yourself. It's so hard to dig yourself out of a depression, because you've dug yourself into such a very big hole. And you know, little by little, I tried these little shifts, and so I landed myself back on this bathroom floor, curled up, bawling in such agony, so much agony. I mean, the agony that depression is, if you suffer with depression or you know someone that does, the agony it's unbearable. It's so unbearable that you would be willing to sacrifice your own life to escape it. And you know, it's not that depressed people just want to die. It's not like, you know, any logical mindset would be like, well, why would you want to die? Well, it's only because that agony is so unbearable that we would rather sacrifice our lives in order to escape that. And that's how painful it becomes. And it even, emotional pain and mental pain becomes physical pain sometimes, and it feels like, to me, it was like daggers in the chest, and so I'm curled up again on this cold bathroom tile, the house I grew up in, bawling my eyes out because I can't cry in my living room, which was my bedroom. This was the only privacy I had, and I was cursing God, basically. Why won't you take me? Why won't you take me? And in a minute, I started to look back on my life and look back at the fact that at this point, it had been 11 years I had been on this bathroom floor, begging for God to take me, waiting for someone to come save me from this depression, from this pain, waiting for some external knight in shining armor. And the fact that it had been 11 years was a wake-up call for me. And all of a sudden, I had this awakening. So I even had like a double awakening. I had this first awakening, and it was, I've been doing this for 11 years, begging for God to take me. I'd been reading from Eckhart Tolle all about how the way to end suffering is to stop resisting and to accept. And so that played in my mind, and I thought, I have to accept that God isn't going to take me, that I'm stuck here in this hell. I'm stuck here. And so there was a slight peace with that, and I stopped crying and I wiped my eyes, and it was like a big dose of reality, like, God ain't taking you. God's not taking you. You've been asking, you've been trying. I can't tell you how many times I've landed in the hospital. I've been trying. How many times I've drank myself nearly to death. How many drugs I've taken. I should have been dead and I'm not. God's not taking me. And so I wiped my tears. I went to the sink. I splashed my face with some cold water and took a deep breath, and I walked downstairs. And as I walked down this dark hallway in my stairs, this home I grew up in, the light shining in at the bottom opening of the stairway, and as almost right at the moment, and my mind is still sort of turning, I'm still having this like awakening as I'm walking down the steps, and I'm thinking about all of the people that I've been waiting to come save me, and I thought about how none of them, I mean, they've tried. So many of them have done all they could to help me. So many of them never gave up on me and did all they could, and still I was unhappy because they couldn't make me happy. They couldn't bring me joy because joy was mine to have. It was on the inside. They couldn't be happy for me. There was nothing that they could do to save me. So I realized that God wasn't taking me and nobody could save me. And as I stepped down on the bottom landing of my steps, and the bright sun in my dining room of the home I grew up in hits my face, I realized that I was going to have to save myself. I was going to have to pull from every bit of strength that I had in me and gear it towards my own happiness. And the only way I came to that realization was from acceptance. I stopped resisting. And it happened naturally. It wasn't something that I forced. It was something from reading, you know, The Power of Now and kind of knowing what I had known logically and taking my steps of awareness and starting to detach myself and, you know, getting rid of those vices, which were the first 2 steps that I took so that I was raw and stuck in my own emotions and my own depression. And of course, my depression got even deeper when I had no alcohol to chase and, you know, I had none of that. And I look back on that 11 years of my life and I realized that, God, I've wasted 11 years. 11 fucking years. A whole decade, over a decade of my life, I have been waiting for somebody to come save me, feeling sorry for myself, not owning my own power, not even testing my own power. I gave up all my power to what? Depression? Fuck. That was a wake-up call for me. And those 2 steps, I mean, really the 3rd step for me was acceptance. But that 3rd step was what was absolutely 100% necessary in order to begin to change, in order to realize that I needed to save myself and brought me into the 4th step, which we'll talk about next week. But that for me, acceptance, the, you know, ending my resistance. It is so fucking hard to accept that you have to sit in your own pain. It fucking sucks, okay? It sucks. It sucks 11 years of wanting to die, wishing I could die, trying to die. It sucks having to realize that you're stuck in this pain. But it only takes a few moments after accepting it fully to be able to change it, to have that beautiful awakening and be inspired to do it yourself, to make that change. So Eckhart Tolle talks about that in The Power of Now all the time. You must accept in order to change. You cannot change anything unless you accept what is. So accepting my reality, and I will talk about how, you know, pain is really just an illusion, and we'll talk about that in the next few steps, that my reality really wasn't reality. But at that point, I had to accept it. I had to accept that pain. There is a shitload of pain that comes with depression. And the last thing we want to do, and the reason we want to die so bad, is because we don't want to fucking feel it. It sucks to have to feel that much pain. It feels like you might die, but you won't. I promise you won't. But you will die a slow death if you don't face it. And for me, I died a slow death for 11 years, not following my own heart, not living my dreams, the magic that's inside of me, and nobody knew it because I was so stuck in resisting what is in that moment. So that's really all I have to teach from that moment, is acceptance. That's your next step. It has to be some step. Otherwise, you will suffer. You will suffer. And, you know, in this divine storm that I'm going through right now, my suffering has come from resisting. And I have been resisting, and my ego has been resisting. I know that it's not me. I know it's not the truth of me. My ego does not like what the fuck is going on right now. But I have to accept it in order to change it. I have to accept it in order to change my perception of it. I have to accept it. It's the first step. And so do you, and so does your loved one if they're suffering with depression. We have to feel those feelings. And they don't always, you don't have to feel them all at once, but the willingness to sit in them is where your savior lies. And I hope you get that. I hope really inspires you, because it was the single most pivotal moment in my entire life. The single most pivotal moment in all my life. And it is the reason I am able to sit here and speak to you about this. And it's the reason I've been able to do such beautiful things in my life over the course of the last 6 years. That was 6 years ago. It wasn't actually that long ago. But I have done so many beautiful things in that 6 years. I've moved mountains in 6 years, and I'm moving one right now. What I'm going through right now. I needed this. I needed to say this. I needed to hear this, and I hope that you needed this. And if you know anybody that needs this, please share it. Please join the inspiration conversation on DariaAwaken.com. Comment below this video. Let us know if this inspires you. If you know anybody that needs this kind of help, please, please share this video series with them. And please, as I said in our last video, point anybody you know suffering with depression in my direction, because it is the reason I live, is to help those free themselves of their own suffering so that they can live by the sound of the music within them, follow their own hearts, and move those incredible mountains that God has put them here to move. But you got to get past yourself, and these are the steps that I take. So make sure that you follow me on social media at Darienne Empire, and join Mission Love, our mission to create a loving environment online, one loving post a day, at missionlovemovement.com. I love you guys so much, and I will see you next week. Mwah.